Hello and a very warm welcome to you this Thursday afternoon. I'm Alison Southern, Team Vicar in Melksham, and welcome to the Table Talks. It's good to have you join me across the airwaves. How are you doing today? Still enjoying this glorious weather here in Melksham? It truly is wonderful. I've had a mixed bag of a day so far today. I had a meeting in my new office. I've got a new office. Very, very grand, very spacious, fantastic view. Well, it's not so much an office as a space under a tree that I seem to have bagged down by the river. And it might be behind the toilet block, but it's very lovely when you get there. It's a place where I can go and meet people at a distance. So I take a chair and somebody brings a chair and we sit and we chat. And it's really good to have that connection. We are socially distanced, but we are together. And for me in my ministry, that's a real blessing to feel like I'm actually seeing people again, not just looking at a camera on the back of a chair. So it's really, really been a lovely, lovely space this morning to be in. And then when I came back, I went on a webinar. You know, you used to go into seminars, and there's often seminars advertised within the Church of England, usually held up in London, and you can go to, and they are in big rooms with no windows, very hot, very intense. But in these days of COVID, they are changed. And now we gather at my kitchen table with several hundred other people, and we are able to talk about the things that are happening in our world and in our culture at the moment. And that's exactly what we were doing today. I was able to be part of a discussion about how this world would look post-virus. We are the virus generation, if you like, the ones who will have experienced and survived COVID-19, or not survived COVID-19, but who's left? How do we rebuild with the ones that we've lost, with the ones who are still struggling with their health, with all those who have nursed and cared for those who have been dying and ill, and all those who have been isolating themselves for so long and changed the way our world looks, and for those whose businesses are no longer the businesses they were and are in a period of complete and utter flux. The unknown of the Generation V. It's a funny place to be. I've said that so many times. Part of the conversation we were having was about trust, about who people trust in these strange times and strange days. Who do you trust? I can remember as I was growing up, there were several people within the village of Ardishig that I did grow up in Argyll, that I would just automatically know that I would trust. I would trust the local head teacher, for instance. And there was also the local vicar and actually the local pub landlord. He was a good sort, and everybody knew that if you were in trouble, he would help. The cafe owner too was a good person to go to if you were in trouble. But those connections, those human relationships that were about knowing what somebody was like, knowing their character, knowing whether you could trust them or not, whether they would be speaking the truth to you, they were things that I took for granted as I was growing up. I don't think we can take those things for granted anymore. And as we were thinking today about trust and what that is and what that looks like in our society and how we move on from this virus, who do we trust? A question was asked about whether we trust scientists who have spent their lifetime examining and following the actions and probabilities of virus, if that's a plural. Or do you trust Google, which you can press a button and all of a sudden you're the expert? Fascinating questions. And that led on to the notion that was put forward, that actually people are now shifting. We now trust people who will heal and look after our bodies. So all those who are working in the National Health Service, so doctors and nurses and carers and people who tend to our human body, those are people who we seem to be trusting implicitly, which is understandable when we're relying on those people to keep us together, to rebuild us, if you like, if we've been hit by the virus. And we've been particularly relying on them to care for our loved ones as they have moved towards their end moments. Of course, we used to trust different people, people who were focused on words, politicians. Maybe that's not such an easy thing to know and to believe nowadays. Clergy too, always trusted people who speak of words. But nowadays, those jobs are seen differently. Those who use words in journalism, in politics, and yes, even we clergy, are often looked at and scrutinised, and there's often an element of mistrust as to anyone who makes a living out of using words. My argument to that today was that actually I don't just use words, although I do a lot of speaking, as you would have noticed at the kitchen table. But for me, the Christian faith is so much more than words. We are useless in the role of disciples if we are speaking and not doing. If you are to look at someone and see what they believe, then you need to look at what they are doing as well as what they are saying. But in many ways, we are a nation, I think, probably a whole world of people who have had to learn different ways of finding truth. What is truth? How do you know if the story you are hearing is true? We are raised to question. We are raised to believe that there is no such thing as truth. Of course, for me, I believe in the truth that is Jesus. He told us very clearly in his own words, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So for me, Jesus is my truth. But what use is that understanding of truth if I can't express what that means in my life today and now to other people? And how you express that is through more than words, but through deeds. Through sharing your story, certainly. We all have a different story, a different way of moving through life, how we are raised, where we are raised, the families that we live in, all do things differently. Some families communicate beautifully and endlessly, other families do not. Some families argue incessantly and yet love each other deeply. Other families never argue, but very rarely share of themselves with each other. We are all different about how we live our lives. And that comes from our experience. So post-virus, our culture will be rebuilding itself. Do we go back to the way things were? Or do we use this moment in time, to really think about what that truth means to us? To really think about how we live our lives. Are we going to do things the same as we've always done? And I have to say the church has quite a reputation for being fairly strong on that one. This is how it's always been. I can remember very early on in my training for the ministry, I was told a story of a group of women who had met for prayer together at 3:30. And that was the time they always met. And there came a clash of diaries. And they said, oh no, but that's when we meet. The question was asked, well, why do you meet then? Well, because it suits us for picking up our children from school. There wasn't one of them under 90. Do you see what I mean? It's a habit that we get into. And church is very, very good at that. We've always done it this way. Now might be the moment. Now might be the moment where we suddenly realise that actually we can do it differently. I think we won't be going back to how things were. Even as our doors open in church, our numbers, I think, might be limited. Our space will be used more effectively for protection of others. We'll have to adapt, like everyone will have to adapt as to how they work. But what matters is that we stay connected with our world in whatever way that is. The blessings of being able to talk to you from the kitchen table are huge. I love it. And if you're watching, but you wouldn't think of coming to St Andrew's Church, or St Michael's, or St Barnabas, or any church, drop me a line. Tell me how you're feeling about what you're hearing. Tell me whether it's helpful, whether it's not. Tell me whether you want it to carry on. Because even when the doors of church are open again, my gut instinct is that this is what needs to happen. This is one of the places where we can connect. We live a busy life, I know, and we all find different ways of filling our time. But if this is a helpful time for you, then do let me know. So as we think about what our culture will be, how we share our stories, what difference it makes in your life, we have a moment of opportunity, which is in many ways a blessing. Think it through. How will you share your story? How will you share the truth that Jesus has in your heart for somebody else? And if you've never explored that question, how do you have that conversation? We'll continue to talk, we'll continue to act, we will continue to find different ways of connecting with each other. And even if the world in its entirety is different, we will go step by step together. And in that stepping forward, we find new ways of supporting one another, getting to know who we truly are, where masks are gone, and maybe, I pray, we are able to open our hearts, share the things that matter, and build a wonderful future. Take care. Join me again tomorrow. God bless.